Julie, thank you so much for coming in studio today. It's good seeing you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
I did. I'm still full.
That's when you know it was a good Thanksgiving, right? When you don't have to eat for like 2 days afterwards.
Oh, no, I kept eating. There are leftovers.
I'm very blessed because my wife is a fantastic cook and every Thanksgiving is great. But I've also had food that you have prepared, and I know that you are a wonderful cook as well. So I am sure that the Gunlock family was stuffed and satisfied when they finally pulled away from the table.
I only had to make a few sides. My mom made most of it. I've been known to ruin turkeys. It's one area that I lack talent, so my mom took care of the turkey.
Really?
Yeah. It's embarrassing thing to admit, but turkeys aren't that hard. You put them in the oven. Somehow, mine twice have not turned out so well. So my mom took care of the turkey, and I did some sides. I don't know why I'm publicly admitting this. It's one of my most shameful secrets. But anyway,
you're among friends. I did hear. Listen, to make you feel better, I did hear a story at lunch today. Guy sitting next to me, his daughter brined their turkey, and then his son-in-law put the turkey in the oven. Nobody told him to rinse the turkey before he put the turkey in the oven. And the guy said the white meat wasn't too bad. It was actually moist for once. But he said the dark meat was like so salty. He said, I thought I was going to gag. So at least you've never done that, Julie Gunlock. You can feel better about yourself.
I have not. So, thank you for that. Thank you for that story.
Absolutely. All right, now the president has he pardoned the turkeys and then ate more turkey on Thanksgiving, and now he's off in Paris where he's saying things like acts of gun violence like what we saw in Colorado Springs don't happen anywhere else other than the United States. Saying this again in Paris, France.
Right.
Right. But while he's there, Julie, the premise of his visit is this big climate change conference. So you've got all of these very important people flying in from all around the world with their carbon footprints trailing behind, right?
Right.
To tell us, the ones who are back at home, the ones who don't fly all the way around the world all the time, we need to really change how we live in order to save the planet. Am I getting this?
Yeah, you're getting this. And it's so sad that these people don't know that phones have been invented. I mean, do they know?
Video conferences. Hey, you know what?
We're doing.
Julie, where are you right now? Where are you?
I'm not.
You're up in Alexandria.
Yeah,
Where am I? I'm in Farmville, Virginia. Wow. Through the magic of technology, you and I can communicate almost like we're in the very same room.
We can. And so it makes us the real environmentalists here. I mean, I guess I could have driven to Farmville this morning if I were like the president. I would have. But I chose to love the earth and instead join you via video conference, which apparently they don't know this technology exists. I mean, someone at the White House has got to tell the president that there's this new technology out there where he can save, billions in carbon emission if he just stays home and links up via video. It's great. It's great technology.
It is. Makes for bad press conferences, though. You lose some of the oomph factor, and you gotta factor in the oomph when you're calculating your carbon footprint. But look, while the president's over there, and again, we are going to have to make big adjustments to our lives,
right?
All of us as consumers. But you look at, for instance, West Virginia, Kentucky, southwestern Virginia, cold country.
Yeah.
Basically, you all better pack up and find somewhere else to live because the president has no need for you to live in your homes anymore because your industry's, in essence, going to be decimated. Yeah.
Charlotte Hayes, who's a fellow at IWF, she blogged about this morning. 27 coal mining companies that operate in the central Appalachian area have gone bankrupt since 2012. Coal production has declined by 45% since 2011. 332 coal mines in West Virginia have folded. That has led to the loss of 9,700 jobs, over 9,700 jobs. And West Virginia has the highest unemployment rate in the U.S. And I had to write some of these things down. I mean, it just the list of just grim statistics here is just so depressing. And obviously, this is the result of Obama's environmental measures, a totally overactive EPA. And so, we have a coal industry that is just being decimated. And then we have a president who's going overseas, burning jet fuel as he goes, suggesting that he's concerned about the planet and doesn't really care about the conditions in West Virginia, a state that's really suffering and a population that just there are no jobs in that state. So it's very sad.
Well, look, here's the plan. If you've been to West Virginia lately, when you drive out on I-64 from Virginia into West Virginia, there's a big rest stop not too far across the border, and they have like a little artist colony there. I think it's called Kanawha, but I could be wrong about that. And so what we need to do, Julie, is we need to teach all of the former coal miners and all of their families handicrafts so they can become genuine Appalachian artisans, and they can make little dolls and stuff, and they can sell them in gift shops.
It's quaint.
To rich, wealthy residents of D.C. who are traveling to West Virginia, right? For the weekend, and that's what they get. Coal to handicrafts.
Yeah.
I think coal to crafts. There's your slogan right there.
Yeah, it's so sad.
Let's turn West Virginia into one big artist colony.
Look, there are. I mean, I don't know about you, but I am seeing tent cities around this city, around Washington. I was driving to a store right outside of Washington with my sons. They saw this large tent city that was set up sort of in a wooded area. And they were so excited because I have two very young boys. Well, I have three very young boys, two of which are in the Cub Scouts, and they've just started to learn about camping. And they were so excited that all these people were camping. And I frankly did not explain to them that, no, that's a tent city of people who can't afford housing, do not have jobs, and are really, on their last leg here. And the same is true for all major areas, but also, in West Virginia, you have these kinds of communities. This is really disturbing. The press entirely, the mainstream press entirely ignores this. But this is a result of so many of these policies, this incredible regulatory burden that American businesses are having to carry now, and there's no job creation. People have dropped out of we know these. I don't have to repeat these statistics. We know that people have dropped out of the employment rolls. We know that the employment situation in this country is just terrible. But again, you're starting to see things, that look like the Depression. And, it's really depressing when the president is over there, eating in these 5-star Michelin star restaurants and ignoring the true problems in this country.
It is remarkable. The last time I was up in D.C., I was listening to the local news station, WTOP, and they were talking about a tent encampment, I believe is what they referred to it as, in Rock Creek Park, which is in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
And it had been there for months and months, and then the day that I was driving up, the police had moved in and had evicted everyone from their tents. By the way, having found homes for the people there. They said, we're going to find homes. We're going to find homes for everybody. And I guess they did find housing for some people, but not for everybody. But you can't stay here. It struck me at the time.
I'm sorry, go on.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I just remember when I was really little and Reagan was in office, the good old days, and how the homeless problem was front and center on every newscast. Mitch Schneider, the famous homeless advocate, and the Mitch Schneider homeless shelter in Washington, D.C., the development of that. This was a major story. The press is completely ignoring this problem in our country today.
That was my thought exactly when I heard the news story. My first thought actually was, we need comic relief. Did you remember Comic Relief?
Yeah, yes,
It was
yes.
all about solving the homeless problem in Reagan's America because the cold-hearted Republicans were clearly responsible for the homeless.
Yeah.
And so you had, Whoopi Goldberg and
Billy Crystal and
Billy Crystal
Robin
and
Williams.
Robin Williams. And, those were the three big hosts. But, I mean, that was a huge deal when I was a kid.
Yeah, it was like Farm Aid.
And it was
yeah.
very distinctly uncaring conservatives who were to blame for this.
Yeah.
And you're right. Here we are now, 6 years into the Obama administration. Homelessness is on the rise, not just in Washington, D.C., but around the country. We are told that the economy is doing so much better, right? Except unexpectedly when it doesn't do as well as we thought. And yet, if you just look around, you know the economy's not doing great. Now, again, driving to Washington, D.C., you'll drive by that tent city, Julie. You'll also drive by townhomes being constructed going for $800,000
Yeah, you will.
for a townhome.
Yeah, but they're not only just in Rock Creek Parkway. I mean, they are throughout D.C. and actually on the outskirts. I mean, the one that I saw was close to Dale City, which is way down 95. So again, we're seeing these crop up all over, and this isn't just a D.C. phenomenon. They're also in rural areas where people are just really, really struggling, and we need a president who is taking on these issues and focusing on the real issues. I mean, people are afraid of so many things, not only their own economic stability, ISIS and all sorts of other issues. And he's over in France focusing on something that does not register as an important issue for the American public. It's just very depressing, very alarming. Well, I think we'll all be looking forward to this election year. Well, I don't know. Gosh, it's... I'm not entirely sure that's going to go well.
It does sort of explain. Well, I was going to say it does explain maybe a little bit about what's going on college campuses as well. When there are real big, scary things to be concerned about, and yet on college campuses, it's microaggressions, it's unsafe spaces, it's hearing opinions that you disagree with.
Yeah.
This open letter by Dr. Everett Piper, he's the president of Oklahoma Wesleyan University, has gone viral over the past couple of days. I actually interviewed him back when I was making documentaries in 2002 when he had just become president of Oklahoma Wesleyan, and we were doing a documentary on colleges in Oklahoma. And so I went to Bartlesville. It's a beautiful, beautiful campus. It's a private school. Pretty small enrollment from what I remember. I think it was less than 1,000 students when I was back there in 2002. But he writes, he says, this past week I actually had a student come forward after a university chapel service and complain that he felt victimized by a sermon on the topic of 1 Corinthians chapter 13. He says it appears the young scholar felt offended because a homily on love made him feel bad for not showing love. And in his mind, the speaker was wrong for making him and his peers feel uncomfortable. Yeah. And he said, I'm not making this up. He said, our culture has actually taught our kids to be the self-absorbed and narcissistic. Anytime their feelings are hurt, they are the victims. Anyone who dares challenge them and thus makes them feel bad about themselves is a hater, a bigot, an oppressor, and a victimizer. Dr. Everett Piper says, I have a message for this young man and all others who care to listen. This feeling of discomfort that you have after listening to a sermon is called a conscience. An altar call is supposed to make you feel bad. It's supposed to make you feel guilty. The goal of many a good sermon is to get you to confess your sins, not coddle you in your selfishness. The primary objective of the church and the Christian faith is your confession, not your self-actualization. And he goes on to say that this university is not a safe space. If you want the chaplain to tell you that you're a victim rather than tell you that you need virtue, this may not be the university that you're looking for, among other things. This was... And I imagine it's going to be poo-pooed and dismissed by all of the usual suspects who will say, well, it's a pastor, Christian church, Oklahoma, pumpkin, rah, rah, rah. And they'll find, whatever excuse they need to dismiss what it is that the president is saying here. But it strikes me that as I read this, what he is in essence saying, obviously is, from a Christian perspective, the goal is to not pat you on the back and say you're doing just great, if you're not, in fact, doing just great. But the world will not pat you on the back and say, Billy, you're doing just fine, when you are not, in fact, doing just fine, right? And we look at the president right now. Richard Cohen has a piece of the Washington Post today excoriating the president, a guy, he says, who was so eloquent when he ran for office, and as it turns out now doesn't have anything to say because he doesn't have any ideas. The world understands this. The American people understand this. And here is the president and his supporters sort of flailing away, keeping on with what they've been doing for the past 6 years when the act has grown past stale. It's now concerning a lot of people that the response to acts of terror overseas, the response to threats like ISIS, the response to murders in places like Colorado is to demonize political opponents, to try to make everything a soundbite that will lead the news cycle on MSNBC, and to hell with actually trying to, do anything productive. It's all political theater. There's no substance. Meanwhile, the world becomes a more dangerous place by the day.
His cool sort of rat pack coolness has become detached cruelness now. He looks cruel when he doesn't sort of show any emotion when it comes to these terrorist attacks, or really obviously take them very seriously. His just inability to act. I think it's adding to why people are so scared. And I think for sort of people with a shred of common sense, when you look at the world and the real dangers out there, it really leaves us gobsmacked that these university students seem to be so clueless about the real world and the real dangers and the real struggles out there, and focus on these really petty things like Halloween costumes and safe spaces, and someone gave me the stink eye and made me feel bad. It just the pettiness and smallness of college students is just strange to see in these really serious times. We have coddled a generation for far too long. It's troubling. It's troubling that these are the future leaders. It'll be interesting to see, what sort of policies they get behind.
I still don't want to paint with too broad a brush. I still happen to think that most college students are not snowflakes or cry bullies or whatever
I agree with you.
The nickname for these folks is.
Yeah, and when I was in college, these people existed. I mean, I think you're right, and it's good for you to say, okay, let's calm down a little bit, but because they existed when I was in college, and there was a silent majority, people who just kind of didn't really want to fight and didn't really want to, just let them go,
Right.
let the freaks go, let them just blather on. I've been happy to see support at Yale, the two officials who were screamed at, actually the husband of one of the woman who wrote the email about the Halloween costumes, sort of defending people's ability to wear whatever costume they want, and then her husband went out on the campus square and defended her. And I'm sure most of your listeners have seen this video of this girl screaming at him. It's very Red Guard-like. And there has been now a petition of support for those two officials at Yale, signed by prominent members of the faculty and many others. And so that's a good sign. I'm happy to see that there has been some pushback on this. And I think you're right that, not everybody is like this. Not all students sort of walk in lockstep with these folks. But it's troubling. It's scary to me.
It is, and it doesn't take a majority of students because they do have, they're very loud.
Yeah.
They get the attention of the media, which I think in some cases eggs them on and loves to write about it, particularly when they attack the media, because now all of a sudden the media can claim the victim card too, and it just becomes this enormous festival of self-actualization, and it's just awful. And as you watch it from the outside, you just want to wash yourself. But I think that we're seeing a lot of that, and so it doesn't take a majority of college students to be this way.
Right.
But it does, as you talked about that phrase, the silent majority, back when we were in college. It does take, I think, in these times, the silent majority to make a little noise themselves, to let people know, hey, some of us are actually here to get an education, right? Some of us aren't here to lecture our professors. Some of us are here to get a degree and move on with our lives. And we understand that, life in our early 20s kind of sucks because we're just starting out. It's okay. I expect life to be much better for me in my late 20s and in my early 30s as I work hard and I move up the career ladder. That's what I'm okay with. To stand up for that because, frankly, even wanting that life to some degree, will bring you criticism on a college campus. How dare you try to be happy when
Well-
we live in such a miserable and wretched country.
And this
right?
is-
How dare you? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is for a whole nother show because I can't go into this at the end of my segment here, but it just does really point to why sort of traditional education now is just, it's not a place to learn anymore. I always get very excited when I see alternative, educational products and systems. MIT now offers, for the first time this year, you can get your degree from MIT online. Now, when I see videos like this, I mean, I don't want my kids to become agoraphobic and never leave the house, but I have no interest in sending them to a 4-year institution if they're going to get involved in this distracted baloney that has nothing to do with their education, and in fact, walks them back from understanding liberty and freedom and really important, I think, concepts like that. So, I think this is a whole nother show, but I think that what's been happening on college campuses, I think parents need to understand they should really be looking at alternative forms of education for their kids, and this goes beyond high school, beyond the sort of grade and middle and high school. I mean, for college, there are a number of opportunities out there that are really creative and cost less money. So investigate those things. I have no interest in really sending my children to one of these. I don't care if it's Yale. I don't care if it's Harvard. They're not going to learn anything in that environment.
Julie Gunlock, listen, I appreciate you coming on the program. We have got to run, but clearly we both had a lot on our minds today. I'm glad you could join us, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Julie Gunlock with the Independent Women's Forum joining us here on NRA News, Cam and Company.